So welcome back to the second part of the video series on designing my N-scale layout. In the first video I went over a little bit about the railroad that I was going to be modeling, and then I talked about the bench work, and I showed you some images from Google Maps and some images from the internet just showing the area that I'm going to be modeling. In this video I wanted to show you the track plan that I've come up with and a wiring schematic that I also designed for the layout. And then I wanted to finish off by talking about the operation for the layout and how I've sort of configured that. So as you can see here, I've got the track plan here. It's showing the area that's going to be represented on the layout in between North Anson, Maine and Oakland, Maine. North Anson is up above here, and then Oakland, Maine is down below, and this is where the interchange on the railroad takes place in Waterville, Maine. So as you can see here, the main line comes down here and curves what would be the curves around the town of Madison and goes along the Kennebec River over here and the natural gas pipeline to the log dam, and that was shown in the images from the last video. And these three tracks here are the tracks that go directly into the Madison Paper Industries paper mill. We have the inbound chemicals track where they receive various chemicals, which are actually listed down below, and we'll talk about those in the next video. And then these two tracks here are where the boxcars are loaded and shipped out, and when they're arranging the cars to be shipped out, they store some of them on the outbound storage track here while arranging the cars. And then as we continue down the main, there's storage siding 1, and storage siding 1 is used as a runaround track on this layout to be able to pull cars down here onto the siding, run around and rearrange the cars at the mill. And then we continue on down the main line along the pipeline to storage siding 2, and in the real world there's a switch at the end of this storage siding 2, and I originally planned to model that, but there just wasn't enough room to have a good lengthy siding, so I decided that this could be used to just shove some cars over on the side, and then I could use storage siding 1 as the runaround. Originally the runaround track would have been storage siding 2. So this is the configuration for the track plan that I've come up with. And again, the measurements that I mentioned in the last video were 18 inches deep by 6 feet, and then an L shape which comes down to 4 feet down here. And it'll be small, but should have a good amount of fun operations available. Next I wanted to sort of go over the electrical diagram for this layout, and I'll bring that up in a second here. There we go. So as you can see, the black and red wires are for power to the tracks, and this is to represent the power pack. I'll be using a basic just DC power pack for this layout. I'll be using a single engine, so DCC won't be needed. And I'll also be using insulated rail joiners in various locations, one here at the mill, one here at the end of the main line, one before the switch to go into storage siding 1, and then we continue on down the main. There's another one here and one at the other end of the main line, just to ensure that a good current is flowing through the tracks. And then these green lines here represent the wiring for the switches. Now I haven't decided if I wanted to use manual switches or electric switches. I'm debating on that right now, but I wanted to add in the wiring plan for that anyways, just in case. So it's a very, very basic wiring job. Nothing's going to be too complex in terms of bench work or wiring, anything like that. I'll be putting more time into operating the trains as realistically as possible and modeling the scenery and the structures as realistically as possible. And I'll keep the electrical very basic. On the right here you can see what I call a train service plan, and this is the operation of the train itself and how the cars would be arranged on the line and where they would go according to what tracks and so forth. I'm not going to read over all of these steps here, but it gives you an idea. You can pause the video and read this if you wanted to see how the train would be arranged. I've sort of drawn in here the manifest that it's arriving from Oakland, Maine, or the Waterville, Maine interchange, coming up the line towards the mill. And the first cars would be switched off at storage siding 2, and then some would be stored here while the train runs around and pushes the cars into the various sidings that they need to go to. Again, won't go into too much detail, but it will be a fun operation. I could actually even cut down a few steps out of this if I wanted to. And I came up with the operation using a 3D simulation of the trains. I created a 3D railroad and used that to configure the cars and figure out which way they should go and where they should be placed. And I'm not sure if this is correct as well, but since a lot of the freight that this train will be carrying is going to be hazmat materials, the cars will have to be arranged a certain way as they would be in the real world. And I've arranged them right now the way I think that they would go, but I have to do more research on whether or not this is the right way. But the black cars here are tankers, and the blue ones here are hoppers, and then the brown ones are boxcars. Finally, I just wanted to talk about some notes about the railroad, things that I might have covered in the last video, but I can't remember, and just various things that I thought were important in modeling this specific branch and things I've come across. So the time period that I'm going to be modeling is going to be roughly around 2010, when the Madison branch was at its last couple of years. They were having a lot of problems with derailments, and this was causing the shipments to be delayed, which ultimately led to the railway being no longer being used for the mill. So I want to be modeling the track to look as beat up as I possibly can, but still not affect the operations, and I think that'll be an interesting thing to do. I've never actually weathered track intensely like this, so I think it'll be a fun thing to do. Now, the rail service no longer ran north to North Anson in 2010. There was no need to any longer. Operations were cut down due to the fact that industries were being closed further up the line, so that the Madison paper industry was the last industry on the Madison branch, and this allowed the train to set off their cars on the main line when arranging the train, and this wouldn't affect any rail traffic, since this was the only train on the line. The last change, not too important, they used to receive rail cars with oil, and now they receive tanker trucks to bring liquefied natural gas to the mill to power it. Just a little side note, but I thought that's something that could be noted and modeled later on. And finally, just one of the products that the mill makes is super calendared paper. So that just sort of gives you a basic idea of the track plan and wiring. So be sure to check out the third and final video in this series, and I'm going to just talk about the rail cars I'll be using in the locomotives, and just might go into detail a little bit more about the operations and talking about some of the inbound and outbound rail freight that it receives and so forth. So be sure to check out that video. Thanks.